Okay, so we've got this State of Wire Fraud 2025 report that you all sent over from CertifID. Looks like some pretty dense stuff. Let's try to break it down. What are the biggest things we need to understand about wire fraud in real estate right now?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. I think the main takeaway here is we're talking about a really serious problem. I mean, when you look at the numbers, it's kind of scary.
Okay, give me the headline figures.
So, just in general, cybercrime, total reported losses last year were over $12.5 billion.
12.5 billion. Wow.
Yeah, and get this, that's up 22% from the year before.
So basically a huge increase.
Absolutely. And a big chunk of that, we're talking almost $500 million, was specifically in real estate.
$500 million. Jeez.
Yeah, and a lot of it is due to this thing called business email compromise, BEC for short.
BC. Right. So like when someone pretends to be, say, your realtor or title company
Yeah.
and tries to trick you into sending money to the wrong account.
Okay, so real estate. Why is it such a juicy target for these cyber criminals?
Well, a couple things. First, there's a ton of information about properties and transactions that's just out there, publicly available. Property records, listings, even stuff people post on social media.
Right, so these scammers can just piece together a pretty convincing story.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of real estate businesses, especially smaller ones, they haven't always had the same level of cybersecurity as, say, banks.
So they might be easier to hack into, right?
Right. And then there's the whole issue of different regulations in different states.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild west out there, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. No unified standards for cybersecurity. And of course, you've got these huge sums of money changing hands in real estate deals.
Yeah, the median home sale price is what, like $429,000?
Something like that. Plus, we're seeing more and more all-cash buyers.
So even more attractive to criminals.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. This might just be the tip of the iceberg. The report says that only about 59% of businesses actually report when they've been hit by wire fraud.
So the real numbers could be way higher.
Could be, yeah. And this ALTA survey, they found that 17% of title companies sent money to the wrong account last year because of fraud.
17%. That's crazy.
Yeah, and half of those companies, it happened to them more than once.
So clearly a big problem for the industry. But let's talk about what this means for the average person, someone who's just trying to buy or sell a house.
Right, well, it's a tough time for buyers and sellers in general. Interest rates are high, there aren't enough houses on the market, affordability is a major issue. I mean, in a lot of places, the median home price is almost double what it was just a few years ago.
So people are already stretched thin.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And for most people, this is their life savings we're talking about.
Right. It's not like buying a new pair of shoes. This is a big deal. And for most people, it's not something they do very often.
Exactly. The average person buys or sells a house, maybe once every 15 years.
Something like that.
So each time, it feels new and complicated.
And that makes them more vulnerable to these scams, right?
Exactly. People are more likely to trust emails and instructions that seem official, even if something's not quite right.
So they might not even realize that this kind of fraud is a thing.
Yeah. And the report actually backs that up. Over half of buyers and sellers, they said they weren't really aware of wire fraud until they were already in the middle of closing on a house.
So basically too late.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the awareness levels haven't really improved much from last year.
Which is kind of worrying.
Yeah. And get this, over 1 in 4 people involved in real estate transactions, they said they'd gotten some kind of suspicious communication.
Wow.
And nearly 1 in 20 were actually victims of wire fraud.
So like 5% of people.
Yeah, about.
And who are these fraudsters pretending to be?
Well, most often it's real estate agents,
Yeah.
58% of cases.
Makes sense. They're the ones we deal with the most.
Right. Then it's title or settlement agents, about 41%.
Okay.
But here's the interesting part. They also saw a lot of cases where the scammers were impersonating loan officers.
Loan officers. But don't they usually just deal with the mortgage, not the actual money transfer?
Exactly. So this might show that people are a little confused about who's who in the process.
And the scammers are exploiting that.
Exactly.
It's scary how convincing they can be. Remember that story from the report, the one about the home buyer in West Virginia?
Oh, yeah, the one who lost $112,000.
Just heartbreaking.
It is. And what's even worse is that a lot of people don't even learn about this risk until it's almost too late.
Really?
Yeah, the report says that less than half of consumers are told about wire fraud when they first meet with a real estate agent.
So they're already well into the process.
Right. And 12% don't find out until right before closing.
Oh,
Yeah, at that point, you're just trying to get everything signed and finalized. You're not really thinking about scam.
right. You're excited, you're stressed, you just want to get the keys.
Exactly.
And the report talks about how important it is to act fast if you do realize you've been scammed.
Absolutely. Every minute counts. They quote someone from the Secret Service who used to head up cybercrime investigations. He says the chances of recovering your money go way down the longer you wait.
So the good news is most people seem to catch on pretty quickly. The report says 71% of victims realized what happened fairly soon.
Yeah, that's definitely key. And of those people, 73% got all or most of their money back.
But that still means a quarter of them lost a lot, or even everything.
Right.
And there's no, like, clear process for getting your money back, is there?
No, unfortunately not. It can be really confusing. Who do you call? Your bank,
Hmm.
the title company, the police.
Yeah, who's responsible?
And almost a quarter of victims, they don't even report it to the FBI or anyone.
So it's a mess.
Pretty much.
Okay, so the impact on individuals is huge. But the report also talks about a ripple effect. What do they mean by that?
Well, think about it. For most people, buying a house is the biggest financial decision they'll ever make.
Yeah, it's their life savings.
Exactly.
Then,
So
yeah.
when that gets stolen, it's devastating. And it can actually impact the whole housing market.
How so?
Well, if people are afraid of getting scammed, they might be less likely to buy or sell.
Which could slow down the whole market.
Right. And remember, real estate is a huge part of the economy. The report says it's about 18% of GDP.
Wow.
Yeah. So when this kind of fraud happens, it can hurt everyone.
And it's not just buyers and sellers who are at risk, right? Real estate agents and title companies, they can be liable too.
Yeah. And their insurance often doesn't cover this kind of loss.
So they're on the hook for it.
Potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
The report compares it to what happened with banks a while back. They got hit hard by cybercrime, and they had to really step up their security.
So they're saying real estate needs to do the same thing.
Basically, yeah.
The report also looks at how things vary from state to state. Seems like it's not a level playing field.
Definitely not. You've got different laws, different regulations, different levels of awareness.
And that leads to different outcomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For example, when it comes to educating consumers about wire fraud, some states are doing a lot better than others.
Like who?
Well, Alabama's at the top, with 70% of real estate agents saying they talk to their clients about it right away.
70%. That's good.
Yeah, then you've got Tennessee, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Massachusetts, all above 50%.
Okay, so those are the good ones. What about the states where they're not doing so well?
Well, Iowa's at the bottom of the list. Only 8% of agents there are educating their clients up front.
8%. That's terrible.
Yeah. Then you got Nebraska, Arizona, Utah, Minnesota, all pretty low.
So a huge difference depending on where you live.
Yeah. And it's not just about location. The report also looks at different groups of people and how their experiences vary.
Like what?
Well, for example, first-time home buyers and sellers, they're way more likely to get scammed.
Really? Why is that?
Well, they just don't have the same level of experience. They're not as familiar with the process, so they're more likely to make mistakes.
And they're more likely to trust the professionals they're working with?
Exactly. And they also tend to expect their real estate agent to protect them.
Which is fair enough, I guess.
Yeah. And the report shows that first-time buyers and sellers, they're actually 3 times more likely to become victims of wire fraud.
3 times. Wow.
Yeah. And when we look at where most of the victims are, it's interesting.
How so?
Well, the states with the highest rates of wire fraud, they're not necessarily the ones with the worst education.
Really?
Yeah, for example, Massachusetts, they're actually pretty good at educating consumers, but they also have a lot of victims.
So it's not just about knowing the risks.
Right. It's also about how sophisticated the scammers are, how many people are buying and selling, and what kind of security measures are in place.
Makes sense. And what about people's willingness to pay for extra security?
Well, that varies too. The states where people are most willing to pay extra, it's Minnesota, Iowa, and North Carolina.
Interesting.
Yeah, maybe they've seen more cases of fraud, or they're just more aware of the risks.
And when people do get scammed, who do they turn to for help?
Well, that depends on their experience. First-timers, they're more likely to go to their title company or lawyer.
Okay.
But people who've bought or sold before, they're more likely to contact their bank or the police.
So it's all over the place.
Yeah, there's no clear path.
And the report also talks about how older people are particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, folks over 55, they tend to be less aware of the risks.
And they're more likely to rely on the professionals to protect them.
Exactly. But here's the thing. They're also less willing to pay extra for security.
That's kind of counterintuitive.
It is. Maybe they figure that security should already be included, or they just don't understand the technology.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It is.
Okay, so we've got this big problem, and it's affecting people in different ways. What does the report say we should do about it?
Well, they're pretty clear that we can't just wait for the government to fix it.
So what do we do?
The private sector, the real estate industry, they need to step up.
Okay.
And the good news is consumers are willing to pay for better security.
Yeah, the report said 79% of people would pay more for a safer transaction.
Right. So there's a market for it.
Makes sense.
Yep.
And the report also talks about how these scammers are getting more sophisticated.
Oh, yeah. They're using AI, machine learning, all that stuff.
Really?
Yeah, they can target people more effectively, make their emails look more real, and even figure out which companies are most vulnerable.
So it's like an arms race.
Kinda, yeah. We need better technology to fight back.
And what kind of technology are we talking about?
Well, things that can analyze transactions, spot red flags, and alert people in real time.
Okay.
And the more companies that use this kind of technology, the better it'll work.
Because they'll have more data to work with.
Exactly. It's like a network effect.
Right. And the report calls out title companies specifically?
Yeah, they say that most title companies do some kind of fraud prevention, but they're not spending enough on it.
So they need to step up their game.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot to do, but the report does ends on a positive note, right?
It does. They talk about how CertifID, their customers, they managed to verify over 900,000 transactions last year.
900,000.
Yeah. And they identified over $1.3 billion in potentially fraudulent funds.
So it is possible to stop these guys.
Absolutely.
Right.
We just need to be proactive and use the right tools.
Okay, so to wrap up, what are the key takeaways here?
Well, wire fraud in real estate is a serious and growing threat. It's costing people a lot of money, and it's causing a lot of stress.
And it's not just individuals who are affected, it's the whole industry.
Right. But the good news is people are starting to become more aware, and they're willing to pay for solutions.
And there are technologies out there that can help.
Absolutely. But we need to act now.
Okay, so last question for you, and for everyone listening, we've talked about a lot of different aspects of this problem. But if you had to pick just one thing, one action that could make the biggest difference in reducing wire fraud, what would it be?
It's a tough question, but it's something we all need to think about.
I agree.
Thanks for breaking all this down for us. It's been really insightful.
My pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for listening to The Deep Dive.